the domestic response to AI in Japan has been maybe more universally positive than it has been in the Anglosphere.
I'm here at a conference called Vitalist Bay where we're trying to solve aging, and it's a bunch of longevity people. And I'm here actually talking about how you should build with Japan because we're like the most aging civilized country,
Right.
developed country in the world,
Right.
where like 29% of our population is above 65 years old. AI is actually a savior to us because we have so many needs, like labor needs, that will no longer be, there aren't any humans that can actually do the job. And so there isn't this fear that, AI is going to take over our jobs. It's more, finally, AI is going to save us and allow us to be really productive.
We are back with another guest. We've got Rie Yano here joining us. She's a partner at Coral Capital. She's an investor, a long-time investor in both the Japanese market, but also obviously you're based in San Francisco, Rie. So you have a bit of perspective over both ecosystems. Welcome to the show, Rie.
Great to be here, Gabriel.
Thank you so much for having us on. We were just in the waiting room. We were trying to get the connection working. Rie is calling in from a conference. Her dedication knows no bounds. We were completely stuck by. I assume you're in San Francisco right now. The San Francisco Wi-Fi was not doing it for us, but we're back. It's working.
We are back.
Where I wanted to start, Rie, and you can take it in a different direction if you want. But where I wanted to start, there was an announcement. There was a kind of big press event today. The A16Z Japan office is opening. They're trying to lure me back there because obviously all I want in the world is to work from Tokyo, Japan. And so I thought it'd be a good place to start is just to kind of get a sense from you, Rie. You've worked across both. Obviously, you have a focus on Japan. What do you think, what is interesting for you about, Japan is a big market, 100 million people, but it seems to have quite a different culture around technology, around startups, especially historically. Why don't you give us a bit of insight into what that looks like and how it compares to the US?
Yeah, sure thing. So I'm excited that A16Z decided to open its first non-US office in Japan. And it's actually the same with Anthropic, actually. So Anthropic CEO Dario, just last October, had also visited and opened their first non-US office in Japan. So there's definitely a lot of interest in top US companies opening up shop and having presence in Asia, and they're choosing to do so in Japan. I think there are a few things that are contributing to it. As you mentioned, Japan on its own is a big market, 120 million people. We're very pro AI. We're very techno optimistic, actually, as a culture. We love robots. And so this new age of AI acceleration is something that's quite comfortable, I think, for the Japanese people. So maybe there are conversations around certain concerns and backlashes that and tension that you experience here in the US. But if you're based in Japan, actually, we're very, very eager to adopt and take in new tools, whether they're Japanese tools or global tools. I think that makes it an interesting market. I think the other thing is that, right now we're hearing this, new word being used all the time, physical AI. So there's so much innovation with what AI can do on the digital layer, but what's the next step? How are we going to actually deploy this intelligence into the real world? And when you think about how that will be deployed, that's going to happen where there's a lot of manufacturing, there's a lot of industrial robotics, there's a lot of supply chain. Yeah. And so we're just seeing a ton of startup founders and investors actually coming and asking us to kind of introduce folks in Japan because they need to actually be building. It's a phase of building in the real world. And this is a great place where the US-Japan alliance really kind of shines because Japan actually is really looking to the US for top-tier frontier AI technology, like really understanding what's happening in the cutting edge. But at the same time, when it comes to hardware and actually the ability to build, that expertise lies in Japan and some of the Asian countries. So it's kind of like a win-win opportunity, I think, for firms like A16Z to come in and then introduce portfolio companies to Japan, but then also, hand select like some of the top, robotics up and coming companies that may come out of Japan that have an opportunity to actually play in the global field and take the risk capital from a big fund like A16Z.
We'll continue monitoring right after this message from our sponsors. At every founder dinner in SF, everyone's talking about models and data. Nobody's talking about the real bottleneck in AI adoption. It's the connective tissue, the layer between your models, agents, APIs, and context. Kong gives you the platform to power and govern that connectivity. The control tower that governs your traffic, cuts your costs, and sets guardrails for agent-to-agent interactions. Without it, you're not monitoring the situation. The situation is monitoring you. The infra decisions you make in the next 12 months decide whether you're shipping in the agentic era or posting through it from the sidelines. Because when AI traffic scales 100x, the companies without proper connectivity and governance don't just slow down, they can't function at all. Kong manages all of your AI traffic in motion, giving you the full picture regardless of traffic type, and adding a governance layer regardless of model, agent, or architecture. Fortune 500s run on it, AI native startups ship on it. If you're serious about AI, visit konghq.com. You're in back-to-back meetings all day. You're trying to monitor the situation. You're nodding like you're following along. But somewhere in the back of your head, a little voice is screaming, "What was the action item? Did I agree to something? Whose dog was that on the call?" That's where Granola comes in. Granola is an AI-powered notepad for meetings. You jot down whatever messy notes you take anyway, and in the background, Granola is quietly turning it all into something a real adult would write. No bots crashing your calls, no distractions, just a clean little notepad that does the heavy lifting so you can focus. During or after the call, you can actually chat with your notes. Ask Granola to pull out action items, help you negotiate your next raise, draft a follow-up email, or coach you through a tough conversation using recipes from Matt Mochari, Lenny Rachitsky, and others. It's the same tech we use to make our podcast notes. Try it once and going back to your old system feels deranged. Head to granola.ai/MTS and get 3 months free with the code granola.ai/MTS. That's granola.ai/MTS.
You can see just from looking at someone like Dario, you can see a single interview is enough to know that Dario is a man who respects Japan. But I think the
100%.
the broader argument you make is very compelling. I mean, there's long been talks. I mean, there's a conversation going on, which I think it tends to resolve into like too simplistic a binary, which says like, oh, the US has been deindustrialized over the last 20 years. And so what we have to do is kind of return to manufacturing in the US, build an industrial base back in the US. I think there's good arguments for that, particularly in the advanced manufacturing space. But I think the point, it seems to me, that you don't have to do that. That doesn't have to, just because there was downside to outsourcing a great deal of manufacturing to China and other parts of Asia, that doesn't mean there's not also benefits to working with allies like Japan to do advanced manufacturing. That's interesting. So if you're watching MTS right now and you are building a startup around kind of implementing, operationalizing advances in AI into the manufacturing space, into the physical world, and you're looking for partners, Rie at Coral Capital, this connection into Japan could be quite a fruitful one. So you mentioned there, and I just want to pick up on this a little bit more, Rie, you mentioned there the cultural attitudes towards, or the kind of the domestic response to AI in Japan has been maybe more universally positive than it has been in the Anglosphere. I mean, do you have any can you speculate as to like why that is or what's going on there? I think it's quite interesting.
I have a few speculations. So I think one thing is, actually, I'm here at a conference called Vitalist Bay where we're trying to solve aging, and it's a bunch of longevity people. And I'm here actually talking about how you should build with Japan because we're like the most aging civilized country, developed country in the world, where like 29% of our population is above 65 years old, right? So, AI is actually a savior to us because we have so many needs, like labor needs, that will no longer be, there aren't any humans that can actually do the job. And so there isn't this fear that, AI is going to take over our jobs. It's more, finally, AI is going to save us and allow us to be really productive. So I think that's one thing. And I do think the other side is that, one of the things why I do think a lot of San Francisco founders love going to Japan, there's this, we call it like the weed culture. Like there's an obsession towards the techno kind of future world that Japan has always produced in our imaginations, right? We have anime, we have a lot of manga comics. We created, robotic pets from like decades ago. Like we had the idea of coexisting with robots in a peaceful world. That's quite normal to us as an identity. So I do think like that just culturally allows for innovation to be accepted and without kind of like the backlash of the concerns for what it could do to society.
That's such an interesting angle. Like, because I was thinking about it, I was like trying to kind of, before we had this call, I was trying to do my own thinking about this. And
the very
the very surface level kind of like cultural determinism idea that I came up with, which I think is like almost too trivial to say out loud, but it was just like, there is this sense in, that there is this kind of animist Shinto element of Japanese culture that I think has come through in modernity in this really interesting way, where you'll be on a subway in Japan and there'll be a anthropomorphic garbage bin on the wall telling you to take your trash with you home or whatever, right? Yeah, so there's this sense in which it seems to me this kind of this Shinto influence has come through in a really kind of irreligious way into modernity, where it's like suddenly there's this cultural sense of endowing everything with animism, with a spirit. And so it seems to me there's something kind of like funny and appropriate about this idea that you might take an AI model and put it into something, or a robot or something like that, and give it its own intelligence and personality. And that seems to be to kind of mesh well with this existing idea.
It's funny you say that. So it's actually yesterday, I was preparing for my talk here at Vitalist Bay, and I was looking at the Japanese Cabinet Office website, and I saw some of the goals that the government, they're moonshot ideas and goals that like live on the Cabinet Office website that talks about this coexistence where robots are basically nannying your kids, right? Like that, I think in the Western society would be extremely concerning, where people will, I think, there'll be protests about, taking over jobs and livelihoods of people. And I think like that mindset actually doesn't occur to Japanese. It's more like, oh, these robots are adorable, right? They're so cute. First of all, they're not like these, warehouse robot that looks like, they come after you. Sure. They're just, I think there's a human soul that's been like built into these humanoids and robots, like historically, where we as independent like consumers in Japanese society also don't feel that kind of tension or concern around it.
We'll continue monitoring right after this message from our sponsors.
At MTS, we are always monitoring the situation in enterprise software. And right now, the situation is this. When AI code generation first emerged in 2022, NVIDIA master inventor and Harvard engineer Sid Pardeshi took a contrarian stance. Inference time compute and agent orchestration, not pre-training, would be the key to unlocking high-quality AI-driven software development in the enterprise. He believed the real breakthrough wasn't in how fast AI could generate code, but in how deeply it could reason to build enterprise-grade applications. While the rest of the world focused on copilots, he architected something fundamentally different. The first autonomous software development platform leveraging thousands of agents that is purpose-built for enterprise-scale code bases. Blitzy is unlocking 5x engineering velocity and delivering months of engineering work in a matter of days for Fortune 500 leaders right now. Transform the way you develop software. Discover how at blitzy.com. That's BLITZY.com. This episode is brought to you by Macroscope. The last time I went to San Francisco, I found that I couldn't go anywhere, even to the coffee shop, without hearing some founder talk about how they're shipping faster than ever. What they're not saying is that nobody on the team actually knows what got shipped, who shipped it, or whether it's about to break something in production. Macroscope is the AI code-based understanding company, and they fix that. They have 3 core products. The first one is Status, the best way to understand what's happening at your company and what all your engineers and agents are shipping. The second one is Code Review. All this extra code being shipped needs a robust defense layer. Macroscope is the highest signal code reviewer with the least noise. The third is Agent, a single layer of intelligence that synthesizes all the tools in your stack, issue management systems, code, docs, logs, and more, and answers questions, takes actions, and automates workflows for your team. Like an omniscient, always-on, uber-capable senior engineer, plus a product manager, plus a TPM, plus ops person that helps your team be 10 times more productive. Head to macroscope.com/MTS to get started. That's macroscope.com/MTS.
Japan is just good at that stuff. It's really interesting, and I think that's such a good point. Like, there's this cultural attitudes to robots, to any kind of labor replacing technology. In the West, we immediately think they're stealing our jobs. They're going to steal our jobs with robots. And there's this sense, it was interesting. I did a road trip in Shikoku a few years ago, and there's like mountains. There's villages in the mountains of Shikoku where they have made these like dolls out of. They've kind of knitted these dolls of all the people who have left the village to kind of like bring attention to depopulation in the mountains of Shikoku. So there's this real sense, that the villages are kind of running out of people outside of Tokyo, outside of the big metropolitan areas. They're running out of people, and they're looking for ways to replace that. So I think that's a really neat idea.
I think so. There's just like also more openness. I think in the past there was a phase in Japan's kind of like crazy economic growth phase where there was a focus on made in Japan, where like Japanese really focus on everything being made in Japan. And I think this kind of new AI race, Japan is like fully aware of where the weaknesses or where the innovation or like the discovery needs to happen. And there's openness by the government. That's why, Prime Minister Takaichi was meeting with Ben and really investing in the startup space, right? And in the innovations that are not just going to be built within Japan, but we need to look out. We need to actually partner with the players that are innovating, and then really understanding what are our advantages, whether that's in precision manufacturing or, ability to be able to give out permits faster because, we are a manufacturing kind of nation. You see that also, I think like A16Z and Thrive led the Andro round. We also joined their latest round. They had also opened a Japan office just last December. And this is again,
I'm shocked that Palmer Lucky opened a Japan office.
A lot of, of course, yes. And he loves anime too. Who doesn't? But we're just like really excited to see the most innovative kind of speed-oriented, startup cultured, top tier companies actually coming and building shop, not just to, raise capital, but actually building manufacturing with the partners in Japan, because that's going to innovate Japanese companies. We're going to see more Japanese startups that are also influenced by that culture. And that's just like great because I do think they're just like such a divide, right? The speed and the innovation is what makes America great. In Japan, it's actually kind of like the opposite. It's slow, but there's the precision, there's the quality, there's the obsession and the deepness that you go into that is like the perfection is quite remarkable. And sometimes you just kind of have to marry both, especially when we're talking about intelligence and hardware and like deploying, robots at scale and distribution. You have companies like Toyota where, you can rely on players who've been doing this for decades to actually take AI and put it into an environment where it can scale quickly because of like best practices of process.
Right.
We'll continue monitoring right after this message from our sponsors. This episode is brought to you by Merge, the connective layer for production AI. Look, I DoorDash Chipotle probably more than I should. And the thing I've come to appreciate is that I never think about what's happening behind the scenes. I tap a few buttons and a burrito shows up. That's the bar. That's exactly the problem with building AI agents right now. The hardest part isn't the agent itself, it's everything around it. Connecting to the tools your team and customers rely on, letting agents take action with the right permissions, and keeping everything reliable and cost-efficient once you're in production. Merge handles all of that for you. It connects agents to thousands of tools, handles permissions and LLM routing, and lets teams move faster without building it all themselves. OpenAI, Dropbox, and Ramp use Merge to move fast and build AI right. Visit merge.dev/MTS to start building for free. Quick word from our friends at AdQuick. I'm just trying to monitor the situation online as much as I can. Between the pop-ups, the autoplay video ads, and the sponsored posts, it's a miracle any of us see anything at all. That's why marketers are turning back to out-of-home. AdQuick unlocks the benefits of out-of-home advertising in a way no one else has. It's built for marketers, with the engineering excellence you've come to expect from the internet. Out-of-home is one of the best ways to build brand awareness, reach new customers, and reinforce your brand message. It's just been hard to scale. With AdQuick, you can plan, deploy, and measure campaigns as easily as digital ads. Buy from 1,700 plus media owners in one place. Modernize your marketing at adquick.com. That's adquick.com.
I'd love to hear. So if someone's watching this and they're an American, probably they're American or they're in the West, under what circumstances should they come and talk to you at Coral Capital? Under what circumstances should they seek to work with the partners that you can put them in touch with in Japan?
I'm open to any founders or investors who are interested, and in different ways. So whether it is they're seeing certain, it may be an AI company where they're seeing sudden organic users coming from Japan. They're trying to understand why, right? And they're trying to understand, should they go to market? Should they open an office or should they do it remotely? There's a lot of consideration for timing to go to market. And then ultimately also, who are the right people to be speaking with and at what stage? Like if you're going to be working with big companies, especially if you're in defense or in robotics, you're going to be talking with the mega companies that have been around for decades, and there's a way to do business, right? So we'd want to be kind of the Sherpas to help you talk with the right person and propose the kind of right set of information so that we can accelerate some of the deals that might take a bit longer if you kind of came in and didn't know much about the kind of Japanese way of doing business. So we're open. We're open for business. I also love, talking to anybody who just loves Japan's culture, and so happy to always just jam on, what shows.
So dangerous to say that, Rie. Yeah. Watch out. You'll get many weebs, myself included,
in
your DMs. So no, thank you so much, Rie. I really appreciate you coming on the show. Rie from Coral Capital. You're on X.com. We can find you on Twitter.
I am. Yes, Rie Globe and Coral Capital is also on Twitter. So
awesome. Well,
great
watch
chatting.
out. It's so good to talk to you. We'll say goodbye for now. Real big thanks for coming on in the middle of a conference and great to hear a little bit more about the work between the US and Japan on startups. So talk to Rie, folks. Farewell.
MTS is an ex-native live streaming news and interview show covering technology, business, politics, and culture as it happens. Catch us every weekday live on X, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts.